Joe Brown, it was a pleasure having you here tonight, and thanks for the memory.
Yeah, but wait a minute, Eddie. By the way, we have a little surprise for you. I came here tonight with Dr. John R. Lechner, Americanism chairman of the DAV, who has something to say to you. Here he is.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Eddie.
How are you?
This citation is from the Disabled American Veterans of the World War, and it's the reason for my being here. May I read it?
Well, of course.
Disabled American Veterans of the World War, Department of California. To all whom these presents may come, greetings. This testimonial of appreciation is awarded to Eddie Cantor for his outstanding service to the United States of America in promulgating sound Americanism. The disabled American veterans of the World War who fought for the principles of Americanism recognize the unusual service rendered by Mr. Cantor during the last 20 years in his courageous opposition to all anti-American doctrines. His unselfish contribution in money and energy to the welfare of this nation has been a genuine inspiration in preserving the ideals of this democracy. I congratulate you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lechner, and thanks to your organization. I'm proud of being an American. I love America because it wants peace in every country, not a piece of them. I'm glad to live in a nation where my children can be raised by Papa Cantor instead of propaganda.
Good.
Everybody liked Eddie Cantor, and why not? Eddie Cantor, by all accounts, was a really nice guy. Had lots of good friends. Never met a charity he didn't want to donate to.
That was swell. And now, young lady, I'd like a word with you.
Oh, me?
Yes, you. Come over here, Snooks.
All right.
You understand the purpose of this program we're giving here tonight, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what is it?
I don't know.
I thought so. Well, we're trying to get everybody in this whole country to contribute dimes
Why?
to help a lot of poor, unfortunate, sick children, Snooks.
Oh. Mr. Cantor,
Yes?
did you just hear me bust open my bank?
Yes, you're going to buy Daddy a watch for his birthday, aren't you, Snooky?
Oh, no, I ain't.
No? Well, what are you going to do with the money?
Here, you can have it.
Me?
For little sick children.
Well, baby Snooks, that's the nicest gesture I've ever seen. Thank you so much. And now...
Hey there, I'm Mike Gillette, your host. Welcome to When Radio Ruled, episode number 131, Eddie Cantor versus Father Coughlin, 1939. By 1939, Eddie Cantor had been a showbiz legend for a generation, evolving as a performer as entertainment had changed. Starting out as a Coney Island singing waiter, learning his craft in small-time vaudeville so well, Eddie was a headliner in the big time in a few years. One of the biggest names in vaudeville, Eddie then moved onto Broadway to great acclaim. On Broadway, Eddie was one of the few stars who worked with both Flo Ziegfeld and his sworn enemies, the Schubert brothers. Everybody liked Eddie.
Al vento, muta del centro e di pensiero, sempre un amabile reggio troviso, in pianto un riso e immenso nero. La donna immobile, quel fiume al vento, muta del centro. Rosalie, my darling, who did that? Rosalie, my dream. Since one night when stars danced above, I'm oh, so much in love. Rosalie, have mercy. Rosalie, don't decline. Won't you make my life thrilling and tell me you're willing to be La Donna Immobile? Rosalie,
Eddie Cantor was the 19th best-selling recording artist for the decade of the 1920s. Eddie starred in silent films and then early talkies. When radio came along and everybody thought it was a passing fad, Eddie jumped in with both feet and together with Amos and Andy ruled the airwaves before any other megastars figured out that vaudeville was history and radio was the future. Eddie Cantor helped make NBC a radio ratings juggernaut, a huge success that made it near impossible for anybody else trying to compete nationally on the radio. Somebody else like CBS Network? CBS had been hanging around since 1928, slowly acquiring stations all over the country without gaining much of an audience. NBC had 2 networks, all the big stars. CBS was on the outside, not invited to the party, out in the cold, face pressed to the window, watching all the toasty, warm NBC fat cats enjoying all those huge stacks of sweet, sweet money. CBS needed something big to happen. They needed to find a way to get the nation to listen to CBS, or at least stop ignoring CBS. So CBS went after NBC's biggest star, the one and only Eddie Cantor. They wined and dined Eddie, they flattered his family, then they gave Eddie Cantor more money than he thought possible.
Oh, baby, what I wouldn't do with plenty of money and you, in spite of the worry that money brings. Just a little filthy lucre buys a lot of things, and I could take you to places you'd like to go. But outside of that, I've no use for dough. It's the root of all evil, of strife and upheaval. But I'm certain, honey, that life could be sunny with plenty of money and you. Oh, baby, I'd like to buy you a wedding ring, a license to marry and everything, a cottage with roses around the door, room for 2 or 3 or 4, or maybe there'd be more, and there with you by my side, we'll know every joy. I'd be your Will Powell, you Myrna Loy, through the life that's before us, we join in the chorus, 'cause I'm certain, honey, our days would be sunny with plenty of money and you.
Eddie Cantor left NBC at the end of 1934 and began on CBS spring 1935. As CBS hoped, Eddie's audience followed him to CBS and stuck around long enough to try some more CBS shows. CBS was now real competition for NBC, and Eddie Cantor was their biggest star.
And before we sign off, may I leave this thought with some of you motorists, especially at this time of the year. Remember, alcohol belongs in the radiator, not in the driver.
In public, Cantor was known as a charming clown with a side of song. In private, Eddie Cantor was a concerned citizen who dedicated much of his personal time and wealth to Jewish charities and causes. The more he saw the rising hatred directed to the Jewish people, the more he felt the need to ease their burden. From the Chicago Tribune, January 12, 1939. Quote, "Gifts to Jewish campaign asked by Eddie Cantor. Eddie Cantor, radio and screen actor, yesterday called upon Chicagoans to contribute to the Jewish Welfare Relief Fund. He spoke before a campaign rally in the Standard Club. The freeing of thousands of persecuted persons in Germany depends on the raising of $20 million in the United States, Cantor said. Chicago's quota is $2 million, of which $1,200,000 has been pledged." Unquote. The day before that article appeared, another New York newspaper, the Daily News, had reported another charity Eddie was raising money for. Quote, "Showfolk Aid Spain Babies, Infantile Fund. Infantile paralysis in hungry Spanish youngsters yesterday engaged the attention of the local theater folk headed by Eddie Cantor. The theatrical division of General Hugh S. Johnson's Fight Infantile Paralysis campaign launched a March of Dimes on Broadway and throughout New York. Actresses and entertainers will sell dime buttons next week in a $250,000 campaign, unquote. Eddie Cantor gave his time, energy, and cash to lots of charities, especially those focused on the Jewish people persecuted in Europe, a problem he blamed on the Nazis. Not every American agreed with Eddie Cantor. One popular radio personality with differing opinions was Father Charles Coughlin.
It was a lamentable fact that during this past decade, Christian Britain and Christian France manifested little fear of the ideology professed either by Sovietism or by Nazism. Oh, they were more concerned with uttering grave warnings against the extension of Germany's totalitarian economy. Thus, fearing Russia less and Germany more, the diplomatic thing to do was to extend the right hand of friendship to the blood-drenched hand of Stalin.
Father Charles Coughlin was a Catholic priest with a lot of ambition and a taste for controversial opinions. As a young priest, Father Coughlin impressed his bishop with his intelligence, work ethic, and leadership potential. His bishop assigned Father Coughlin in 1926 to create a new parish in Royal Oak, Michigan. From the position of pastor, Father Coughlin began broadcasting his sermons on WJR in Detroit. Stations in Chicago and Cincinnati also soon began broadcasting Father Coughlin. These broadcasts went national in 1930 when CBS picked them up. Soon, Father Coughlin was getting 80,000 fan letters a week. The CBS network got concerned when Father Coughlin's sermons became more and more political, attacking the Hoover administration and the unfairness of the financial system.
There is a sufficient number of us who are so well informed that we refuse to accept the "it can't be done" philosophy of the reactionaries, who are still content to adore the false god of rugged individualism and his gospel of modern capitalism. Oh, the mills of justice and information grind slowly. We know that only within recent weeks the government's report on American incomes for the fiscal year of 1935 and 6 found publication in an obscure corner of the New York Times. We know that of the 39 million Americans who filed tax reports that year, 10,390,000 families reported incomes of less than $750 for the year. Ponder what that means. Nearly 1/3 of all American families buying food, paying rent, begging second-hand clothing, and seeking medical care as they struggle to keep body and soul together on $750 for 365 days to be divided among 5.5 persons.
Finally, CBS stepped in and asserted their right to edit the things Father Coughlin was saying. The good father paid them back by canceling his prepared remarks and using his CBS-provided airtime to heavily criticize the CBS network and the men that ran it. Surprising no one, CBS canceled the show. Father Coughlin then asked NBC to broadcast his sermons, but they politely declined. No matter. Father Charles Coughlin had a dedicated army of followers who would donate the cost of broadcasting and more. Charles Coughlin took advantage of these donations and turned his show into a sustainer. Sustained by his followers, Coughlin himself could buy the airtime needed on every radio market in the country, sometimes on CBS, sometimes on NBC, sometimes on an unaffiliated local station. The good father made his own national network. He could now work without a sponsor and without a censor to edit his message.
I hold no animosity towards the Jews. I distinguish most carefully between good Jews and bad Jews, as well as I do between the good Gentiles and bad Gentiles. I sincerely sympathize with the millions of humble religious Jews, both in America and elsewhere, who have been persecuted by a thoughtless world, a world which does not always distinguish between the good Jews and the bad Jews, a world which lashes at the pillar of persecution the innocent Jews for the misdemeanors of the guilty Jews. Openly and fearlessly do I admit that my main contention is with the atheistic Jew and Gentile, the communistic Jew and Gentile, who have been responsible and will continue to be responsible in great part both for the discriminations and the persecutions inflicted upon the Jews as a body. To prevent happening in America what has happened elsewhere, and to end once and for all the hostility of German Nazism towards Jews, I ask my fellow citizens not only to oppose Nazism, an effect of communism, but to fight manfully against communism itself. I further appeal to them to apply the basic principle of science in their common effort to destroy persecution. The basic principle which teaches us that in order to remove effects permanently, the causes which produce them must be removed first.
Uncensored and unrestrained, Charles Coughlin went to work influencing opinions and building an empire. By 1936, the Good Father was on the air weekly and published a subscription-based national newsletter, Social Justice, where he could express his views, coordinate boycotts and letter-writing campaigns, and raise money. All in the name of justice and Jesus, of course.
Last week, according to the daily newspapers, a little lad 10 years old was selling social justice on the subway trains of New York City. He was assaulted by a man named Silver, who was arrested. He and his type are also active. I speak these things to you as a challenge on behalf of Social Justice Magazine to invite 5,000 more fearless, responsible persons to volunteer to distribute this news weekly, which is determined to play its part in counteracting the warmongers and in keeping America free from foreign entanglements as the events of the past week move us nearer and nearer to the brink of crisis. Social Justice Magazine is of the opinion that if the international disturbers, the warmongers, and the type of persons such as they who intimidate the distributors of Social Justice Magazine are not challenged at this time, both liberty and peace will vanish from our earth, and so will our doctrine of no foreign entanglements. Read of all these things in next week's Social Justice Magazine.
Originally a big supporter of Franklin Roosevelt, Charles Coughlin had been invited to speak at the 1932 Democratic Convention. But by 1934, Coughlin rejected Roosevelt and the New Deal in favor of a more Nazi point of view. As the 1930s went on, Father Coughlin became more extreme, pro-German, anti-communist, and anti-Jewish. The Good Father was anti-Russia and anti-communist. He didn't blame Germany, but thought they were the victim, caught between godless communists and fat cat money grubbing capitalists. No coincidence, he explained, that the commies and the capitalists were mostly Jewish people.
In Hungary, under the atheistic Jew Bela Kun, Aaron Cohen, Apostate Jews dominated communism with its mass murder of more than 20,000 Christians in a period of 130 days of horror. Out of 11 department heads in the Hungarian Communist cabinet, 9 were Jews. Out of 30 total members, there were 20 Jews. And the departments of the Interior, Finance, Education, Foreign Relations, War, Food and Supplies were 100% manned by Jews.
It was these views that led to a public conflict between Eddie Cantor and Charles Coughlin. A conflict that almost cost Eddie his reputation and career. Eddie recognized that a comedian's job was to bring us all together in good cheer. He kept his heartfelt private views as separate as possible from his public persona.
Good morning, pupils.
Good morning, Professor Cantor.
Now, my dear pupils, today's first lesson... Oh, I forgot the horses were here. Today's first lesson is what not to do in radio. For instance, you must try not to offend anyone. Speak about Italy and you hurt Mussolini. Talk of Germany and Hitler gets upset. Mention Sweden and you're stepping on Garbo's toes. And believe me, kids, that's covering territory.
But Eddie had personally known anti-Semitism, having grown up poor in a crowded immigrant neighborhood in a city that looked down on the children of newly arrived Jewish immigrants. Success and fame had reduced the anti-Semitism directed at him personally. But the Nazi propaganda and Nazi-adjacent Americans like Father Coughlin kept encouraging their followers to revile Jews and act out against them. Like when Eddie Cantor got verbally accosted in his own studio. And Cantor's comic sidekick, the Mad Russian, was accused of attacking Eddie's hecklers.
Well, thank goodness, Jimmy, all the excitement and interruptions are over for tonight.
Yeah, that's what you think. Look who's here.
The Mad Russian. Well,
How do you do?
From the New York Daily News, March 29, 1939. Quote, 2 hecklers beaten after Cantor show. Hollywood, California, March 28. Eddie Cantor, banjo-eyed comedian, was upset today because a naturalized American citizen and his wife were beaten up on the street last night after heckling Cantor during an informal story-swapping session following his regular broadcast. It wasn't cricket for Charles Golub to heckle him, he said, but what happened as Golub and his wife Elsie left the Columbia Broadcasting studio was inexcusable, the comedian declared. Golub, who was born in Austria, and his wife were treated at Hollywood Police Hospital for facial cuts and bruises they claimed were inflicted by 3 Cantor admirers after they left the auditorium. They declared Burt Gordon, the Mad Russian on Cantor's program, was one of the men that slugged them. After hearing their story, Assistant City Attorney Don Redwine ordered Gordon to appear for questioning at a hearing set for April 8. Cantor said he was telling jokes to the audience after he had gone off the air when Golub stood up in the back of the auditorium. He yelled at the top of his lungs, giving me the raspberry, Cantor said. He shouted, "I'll fix that Jewish blank." People around this fellow told him to keep quiet, and the man and his wife left the auditorium, and I went on with my program. The man's rudeness does not call for a beating. A man is entitled to say and think whatever he pleases. But when a man and his wife come into a theater as my guests and start creating a disturbance, that isn't quite cricket. Cantor said Gordon couldn't have been involved because he was sitting in Cantor's dressing room at the time of the brawl. Unquote. Things escalated after that. Father Coughlin continued his attacks on the communists and the Jews while defending Germany as the country that was wronged and had to defend himself.
At home, our government executives have declared economic war against Germany. Our papers carry the startling news of an official announcement made by our government executives through virtue of tremendous powers vested in them by Congress that a 25% penalty tariff on goods coming from Germany is now the order of the day. These are sanctions. These sanctions mean economic war. They are the modern method of instituting an undeclared war. Moreover, An Associated Press dispatch appearing today in metropolitan newspapers declares that the General Jewish Council, after a period of 6 years of indefatigable effort, has achieved the boycott against Germany for which it had been working. Still, withal, no boycott is discussed in the matter of Russia. All these percussions and repercussions originate from the powder keg of the so-called Peace Treaty of Versailles. The injustices legislated in 1918 have exploded upon the world in 1939. The Munich Pact, which gave promise of peace a few months ago, has melted in the fires of passion because the peace which it molded was fashioned from the wax of hypocrisy. There can be no peace without economic peace.
Cantor's reaction to all this anti-Semitism was to increase his resistance to fascism through words and deeds. From the Wisconsin Jewish Chronicle, June 2, 1939, quote, "Because of the rows his anti-Nazi speeches and witticisms stirred up, aside from the howling of pro-Nazi hecklers, he is upbraided and abused by a more serious chorus of lampooners. His own people censor him. Tone it down, Cantor, they say. Better not bring the subject up too conspicuously." Far from being a showman's ballyhoo, his fight against fascism is conducted with serious systemic objective. He pays the salaries and transportation of lecturers to the coast to educate and awaken a lethargic public. And neither the audience nor the speaker knows who sponsored the lecture. Little is publicly mentioned of the oratorical contest on Americanism he sponsored through the American Legion. He is sending the winner through college. 90% of what he says and does is based on his fight for American democracy, and 10% is a direct hit against fascism, Nazism, communism, and any other ism that seeks to destroy our government. I do not believe in slugging. I do not believe in violence, but certainly I should be given the same right of free speech that is granted the Bund. They are allowed to make vicious attacks against this government. Surely I should be permitted to speak for it. I do what my conscience dictates, and I am encouraged in the knowledge that I am in accordance with the important people of the time. Unquote. The gloves were off, and the newspapers made sure the American people knew that Eddie Cantor was taking a stand on the most important issues of the day. Unfortunately, taking a bold stand on a political issue created controversy. And one thing the corporations that sponsored radio shows hated was controversy. Eddie Cantor's contract with Camel Cigarettes was expiring, but the show had tied for 6th in the ratings, popular and profitable, usually a guarantee of renewal. But this item appeared in the June 4, 1939 edition of the Nebraska State Journal. Quote, "Eddie Cantor was not renewed by his current sponsor, and Benny Goodman may take over the spot." Unquote. Eddie had lost his show for unstated reasons. Perhaps it was one of Father Coughlin's famous letter-writing campaigns. No one at Camel ever gave a reason. But everybody knew what was going on. It was political. Eddie was blackballed. No offers came in for another show. Phone calls were not returned. It looked like Eddie had free-speeched himself out of a job. Now, with nothing to lose, Eddie decided he wasn't going to back down. At the World's Fair was the Temple of Religion, which showcased the diversity of religion throughout the world. Part of the temple's programs were weekly speeches from prominent representatives of various religions. Eddie Cantor was on the schedule for June 13, and he used the occasion to blast the pro-Nazi Americans he so detested. Eddie named names and insinuated that they were being funded by the American Nazi Party. One of those names so named was Father Charles Coughlin. The reaction was immediate and negative. From the Brooklyn, New York Tablet, June 17, 1939. Quote, Cantor's attack. On Tuesday afternoon, Eddie Cantor, radio, screen, and stage performer, spoke to the World's Fair. The press gave liberal space to this statement of Cantor's. We don't know what important industrialists of America are in back of this anti-Semite movement, he told 300 members of the New York chapter of the Hadassah in the Temple of Religion. We don't know who is paying the freight for people like Senator Reynolds, Father Coughlin, and Mosley. They are not only the enemies of the Jews, but of all America. It would be interesting to discover when Eddie Cantor became qualified to pass judgment on the Americanism or lack of Americanism of the people in the United States. What credentials or authority has he for announcing or denouncing who are the enemies of America? Is it not a fact that he and Winchell did not discover America until 1933? We don't know who is paying the freight for people like Senator Reynolds, Father Coughlin, and Mosley. Is a confession of either ignorance or impertinence. What is meant by freight? And what is meant by paying? One thing is certain. The people know they largely paid the bills at the World's Fair, and they are paying its upkeep. The Temple of Religion defies religion with such hateful addresses. The overwhelming numbers will feel that Mr. Cantor's use of the grounds on Tuesday to insult many of them was entirely out of place. He is better fitted for the role of a comedian of the lighter type, to put it charitably." Unquote. Well, that did it. Father Coughlin and the others named were furious, insisting Cantor was the bigot, Cantor was the un-American. If Eddie had been professionally ignored before, he was now seriously shunned. Father Coughlin continued gleefully with his broadcasts. It looked like the Nazis had won this battle.
How can they be so unkind to us, to organize with their admitted preeminence in banking, in press, in cinema, and in radio?
Only a miracle could save Eddie Cantor's career. Eddie needed an influential friend, and he was lucky enough to discover he had such a friend.
Today marks the 7th radio anniversary of our illustrious and beloved Master of Ceremonies.
Is it that long? Tempus fugit.
Exactly 7 years ago today, a young man walked into a small New York broadcasting studio and spoke into a microphone for the first time.
I was as nervous as a goldfish in a fraternity house. Gee.
There he stood, ladies and gentlemen, wearing a brown suit, cloth-top shoes, a straw hat, and a cane.
I finished with a dance in those days, folks.
So now, without further ado, we bring you that same young man in that same brown suit, Jack Benny.
Multiple sources confirm that Jack Benny took it upon himself to champion Eddie in the search for a new sponsor. As Eddie tells it in his autobiography, "One night Jack paced up and down in his library, then went to the phone and called the head of Young and Rubicam in New York. If radio's going to go on, he said, Eddie Cantor must be part of it." Pause. Yes, I know, but why should he be punished just for having more guts than the rest of us? A few days later, I was in New York, talking with Young and Rubicam, and almost at once I was back on the air for Bristol Myers, unquote. Eddie would stay on radio into the 1950s, and then transition into television. He would remain a beloved celebrity. Father Coughlin didn't have to worry about a sponsor. He purchased his own airtime thanks to generous donations. Donations that soon dried up. Because he had backed the wrong horse, public opinion soured against Nazis and their defenders. The government declared Social Justice magazine Nazi propaganda and forbade the post office to allow social justice into the mail system. The not-so-good father went off the air for good in 1942. Thanks for listening to When Radio Ruled, episode 131, Eddie Cantor versus Father Coughlin. I'm Mike Gillette, your host. When Radio Ruled is a Before TV production. Copyright 2025.
Well, Eddie, 2 minutes to go. Have you any message for us?
Yes, not only for you folks here, but here's an appropriate message for everyone listening in. Just listen to it. The dogs of war are growling, once more the papers say, and battle clouds are starting to appear.
But if they try to drag us in, we'll say, please go away. We're minding our own business over here. If they feel like a war on some foreign shore, let them keep it over there. If some fools want to fight and think might makes right, let them keep it over there. From coast to coast, you'll hear a million mothers pray. Whatever happens, please don't send my boy away. We're for you, Uncle Sam, but stay out of that jam. Let them keep it over there. If they feel like a war and somewhere is war, let them keep it over there. If some fools want to fight and think might makes right, let them keep it over there. From coast to coast, you'll hear a million doughboys cheer. Our job is to protect our loved ones over here. With an ocean between, let us keep our hands clean. Let them keep it over there.